In this video, I want to talk about different ways we can display categorical data. In particular, I'm going to discuss real graphs, pictographs, bar graphs, and pie graphs. Let's start with the idea of real graphs. These are sometimes also called object graphs. The idea is they display actual objects in a graph form. Here's a picture of an example of a real graph. For this, let's suppose we have a tub filled with small beads that are all alike except they have different colors: pink, purple, yellow, and green. We can mix up the beads and scoop some out, and then we just go ahead and stack the actual beads according to their color to make a graph. This would be an example of a real graph. A pictograph is very similar to a real graph, except that it uses icons or pictures of objects instead of the actual physical objects. If we consider the example that we just dealt with the beads that we had drawn out and built the real graph with, this would be a pictograph. Instead of using actual beads, we use circles to represent the beads. Here's another example of a pictograph that looks at the different kind of trees. We have a picture of that type of tree to represent each one, and then we have organized it into a graph form to get a pictograph. In some pictographs, a single icon may represent more than one object, like we see here. Here, every little person represents 1 billion people. And so this would be another example of a pictograph where not every icon represents one object. Next, I want to look at bar graphs. These are also known as bar charts. They're essentially just a more streamlined or fused picture of a pictograph. If we go back to my beads and the colors of beads that I had drawn, I have this bar graph here where essentially I went from beads in my real graph to circles in my pictograph, and then I just kind of fused all the circles together to a bar for my bar graph. A bar graph is nice for showing at a glance the relative sizes of different categories. We can see that pink is the most and purple is the least, very quickly and easily. We can also have what's known as a double bar graph. This is a bar graph in which each category has been subdivided into 2 subcategories. As an example, here is a bar graph about people, where we have the 2 subcategories of men and women, and we use different colors to show which bar represents which gender. Finally, we have pie graphs, which are also known as pie charts or circle graphs. They use a subdivided circle to show how data falls into categories. Here's an example of a pie graph. This one looks at the distribution of US firms by size in 2015, so we can see that 56% of them had 1 to 4 employees, whereas 5% had 50 or more employees. So pie graphs are really helpful whenever we want to talk about percentages.